Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 311. A Bite to Eat. Walking through the streets of Angora City, Michael saw more and more automobiles riding on the roads. It wasn't just the Reborn taxis that were present, there were also more private vehicles, cars that people bought for themselves. But just like his people said, the need for automobiles was now at an all-time high. Michael thought it was because of the Golden Road and its interconnectedness, but maybe the rapidly spreading religion of the Iron Maiden had something to do with it as well. As he enhanced his hearing through the wax moth ears spell, it allowed him to hear a pin drop from 100 meters away. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. A metallic divine woman showed herself that day, saving the people of the grafted cluster from the clutches of the evil Flare Corp. One man with his face painted like that of the metallic woman and wearing just a cube of metal with holes for his arms and legs, preached to a group of citizens walking through the plaza. Whoa! Amazing! Not all people listened to his words, but there were enough people intently latching onto his words to make a crowd. And the automobiles you see running through the streets are her creation, her children. That is how they are able to work without horses, without magic. They are living, breathing creatures. Look at its breath that rumbles every time it starts. Look at its eyes that light up like the sun. Do you not see how they are her creation? Michael shook his head in disappointment as he heard that. Unfortunately, a lot of people believed the man's words and now treated the automobiles like sacred cows or something. And because of that, they wanted to buy an automobile, not to ride it, but to worship it. Now, Michael couldn't really stop this from happening. After all, he believed in a free world where anyone could believe in their own religion. And in all fairness, he too believed that the metallic woman he saw that day was some kind of divine entity as well. However, they were probably the cause of the large demand for automobiles in Angora City and the grafted cluster. He could understand why people buy the pricey cars in Angora City. It's a capital city after all. People were more wealthier here. But in the grafted cluster, there were a lot of settlements still using wood and thatch to build their houses. Yet, this region had the most amount of orders for cars than even a capital city. A poorer region like this would have needed about a year or two before it advanced enough to want cars. Even when Michael introduced automobiles to the King's region a lot earlier, it was only now did the territories become rich enough to be able to afford it. With the help of trucks, taxis, and the concrete roads, it took almost 2 years for the economy surge enough for the whole of the King's region to become richer. Michael thought it would be the same in the Queen's region. Unfortunately, the Iron Maiden hastened this process, leading to a scarcity in automobiles. But Michael couldn't really complain. After all, more demand meant more money for the company. The problem was that they couldn't capitalize on this demand. They couldn't quite keep up. Although they had a lot of money, like a lot where Michael didn't even know where to spend them, he just couldn't find a way to get more resources for his rapidly expanding business. Automobiles were getting sold out left and right even before they were made. The wait list for getting an automobile was getting longer and longer, with people waiting possibly for months before they got their car delivered to their doorstep. And according to some of the reports given to him by the genin or low shadows that were patrolling the streets of Angora City every day, there were some reselling of automobiles going on during day and night for much higher prices. Now, Michael didn't really have a problem with this. That was just how the market responded whenever there was a scarcity in products. He was just worried that the automobile was becoming less and less accessible to people because of these price tags. If he wanted to address this problem, then he would have to stop the expansion of the Golden Road and dedicate resources back to automobile production. But Michael thought that was the wrong way to do it. He needed to expand to new territories in order to find more resources. This is stressing me out a little bit, Michael thought to himself. All this internal monologue made him a little bit hungry. And since he was already here, he decided to look for a local restaurant in Angora City to eat his fill. He walked through the roads alone. He was glad that not a lot of people here knew his face, or else he wouldn't have had this peace and quiet as he strolled through the streets. He came across some Rebornian engineers who were doing some scouting and estimation for the eventual overhaul of Angora City. They had just finished their work, leaving the building they were measuring, and came down to the opposite side of the street where a small eatery was located. This small restaurant was very homely, as if it was just the porch of a house renovated to accommodate only about 10 customers in total. Not only that, but the place was almost run down, with chipped paint in the walls, creaking wooden floors, and almost broken down chairs and tables. The only customers inside were the Rebornian engineers and just one old man sipping water in a cup. "Boss, you're here!" The engineers called out to him, finally noticing his presence. They invited Michael to their tables, and he joined them. They first talked about some stuff about work, but eventually Michael asked them this question. "Why are you eating here? You gotta try this chicken, boss," the Hobmanki said enthusiastically. "It's really good. It reminds me of the fried chickens we had in the nation of Reborn." Michael's eyebrow raised. Fried chicken? Soon enough, though, a rugged middle-aged man and his son came out of the kitchen and brought out 2 plates of a whole steaming hot chicken each. The engineers thanked the chef before going in and ripping out a piece for themselves. So good. Reminds me of home so much. Boss, try it." Spurred by his curiosity and his hunger, Michael ripped out the chicken thigh, feeling the crisp crack of the skin as he took it out. Not only that, but the white meat of the chicken leaked out a scrumptious juice, making it really appetizing. He took a bite. Crunch. His eyes widened with surprise. The crunch was crunchier than anything he had ever eaten in this world or his previous one. The glaze on the skin gave his senses a hot and spicy sensation, yet very pleasing to the tongue. And the white meat itself balanced everything in the bite, completing the entire range of taste. Michael couldn't help himself and took another bite, and another. This was the most delicious piece of chicken he had ever eaten. Chapter 312. Dragon's Whiskers Chicken. Michi looked at the well-seasoned, extremely crispy chicken that he just devoured. It was completely different from the fried chickens he had consumed even in his previous life. Something about it was more exotic and therefore more novel in his tongue. ChatJK4, can you scan this chicken and find out why it's so finger-licking good? Alright. Scanning chicken. A few seconds later, a visual projection of text boxes appeared in his vision, with each box corresponding to a different part of the chicken. Poultry chicken produced naturally, and most probably brought up and farmed personally by the owner. Oven-baked, cooked using vegetable oil at a brisk 170 degrees Celsius. Spices, a combination of native spices, emulated the same texture as fried chicken. However, there seems to be one ingredient added in the cooking process that is not in the recipe database for this type of meal. Can you figure out what it is? The spice that is used is called Dragon's Whiskers, which, despite its name, has no connection to the demi-human denizens of the Draconian Empire. A visual image of Dragon's Whiskers appeared in Michael's vision, showing him a thin green herb that strangely curved down to the root and back up, creating an illusion of a gentleman's mustache. Dragon's Whiskers, a rare herb found in the forestry region in the Queen's region. This particular type of plant has adapted and mutated to have a defensive mechanism to ward off humans or animals consuming it. Upon consumption, the herb will release a particular chemical that reacts with the natural mana found inside the consumer. For some animals, consumption will result in an allergic reaction. But for humans, consumption will result in a mild, almost burning sensation to the tongue, stimulating the mana inside their cores. Just like how peppers mutated to become spicy to taste for regular humans, this Dragon's Whiskers mutated to become spicy to taste for magically enhanced humans. Magic capsaicin, if you will. Most evolved and magically capable humans like Michael barely felt the spiciness of peppers in this world, especially those who practice physical art spells that enhance their body's durability. This new discovery came with a new sensation. He couldn't believe that such a delicious piece of chicken was being served at a rundown restaurant with barely any customers. If any. He looked towards the kitchen area, where the rugged middle-aged chef and his little boy worked together to fry their chickens in the wok. "Excuse me," he called out to them. The chef looked at Michael, finished his cooking, and walked over to him after wiping his hands in his apron. "Something the matter? Did you cook this yourself?" Michael pointed at the already half-eaten chicken on the plate. The Rebornians were just munching on the food continuously. "Yeah, family recipe," the chef replied. "My grandfather taught it to me." "What do you use?" "Dragon's whiskers." The chef was surprised Michael was able to figure it out. "Yeah, that's what you magicians will taste on the chicken. I heard it's extremely pleasant to eat." Meanwhile, his kid hid behind his legs and peeked out at Michael, who seemed to only be a few years older than him yet looking so matured. "Your chicken is the best food I've had in a while, no exaggeration." Michael praised the chef genuinely. "Thanks. It pays enough for my little boy here to go to school," he said, ruffling his son's hair. Michael found it quite a shame that such a delicious piece of food wasn't getting enough attention here in Angora City. But then he realized, this world was at the age where information was scarce and hard to propagate. There weren't any online review sites that could spread the good news about this undiscovered gem of a restaurant. There was only the word of mouth, and that's it. The only reason Michael was able to spread the word of the Reborn products was because he had a lot of money to burn. He could hire newspapers, town criers, and everything else. But this place didn't even have enough money to replace the broken chairs in the room. Although the food was good, it didn't matter in the end if no one knew about it. "I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Michael." He reached his hand out to the chef. "Tony," the chef replied. "And this is my kid, Remy." Michael shook his hands with Tony. "I want to offer you a deal," he said. "What deal?" "The kind that could change your life. I see that your restaurant has the potential to become one of the biggest restaurants in the world. One that would serve thousands and thousands of people every day." Remy's eyes glistened as his imagination soared from Michael's words. Yet, his father was not so easily swayed. "Are you kidding me?" Tony said with a self-deprecating tone. "Don't you see there's no customers here? Unless you have the money to force people to look at this place, then you won't be able to help us." It was at this point that the Rebornian engineers all looked at Tony. "Chef, don't you recognize who you're talking to? This is our boss, Michael. He's the owner of Reborn." Tony looked at Michael with a different gaze now. Although he didn't get out much and spent most of his time in the kitchen, even he had heard of the Reborn company. Practically everyone in Angora City knew about their name and their accolades. Previously, he thought Michael was just talking big. But now that he knew that he could back it up, Tony considered Michael's offer more seriously. "What would a large company like yours want with my little restaurant? There's no upside for you." Michael disagreed. "I'm not doing charity here," he said. "I truly believe that your restaurant could become one of the biggest food businesses in the world. At least with my help. If you become a subsidiary company of Reborn, then we can help you expand your small rundown eatery into a large restaurant in the center of a city." In truth, Michael didn't have to offer Tony this lucrative deal. After all, ChatJK4 could very well reconstruct the chicken recipe by himself once he had a taste of it. He could sell it as his own and create another large subsidiary next to Reborn. But that was bad business practice. He didn't want to be like that. "Is that even possible?" Tony muttered to himself. He had already let go of such lofty dreams while he was a kid, and now Michael was promising him the very same thing. "Of course, once you are under my company, then I can give you all the resources you will need to further expand your business." Michael could see Tony's eyes start to light up. But then, he controlled himself. "I don't want to become a large restaurant company," he said. "I just want to earn enough money for me and my kid to live as we want." The father and son hugged each other. "If that's what you want, then all right. We will take control of your company and give you a portion of the income. And not only that, but if your kid wants to join Reborn, then he can take his rightful place as the owner of this subsidiary." Chapter 313. Another subsidiary. As an honorary Rebornian, you are entitled to some benefits, he said to Tony and Remy. The father and son duo both went wide-eyed as Michael listed out all the advantages that a Rebornian had privilege of having. Guaranteed housing in the nation of Reborn, guaranteed jobs, and a free talent awakening were just some of the things that made it all seem like a dream instead of reality. That last part was already enough for Tony to be willing to sell the entirety of his business to Michael. After all, the only reason he had been keeping up the restaurant despite it not succeeding was because he wanted to give his son a chance to awaken. But now, Michael was willing to give that as a bonus. Tony would probably faint if he knew that Michael could customize skills to give to his son. Yes, we would like to become Rebornians. Tony was quick to change once he learned about Rebornian benefits. Even though the details of their contract still hadn't been ironed out, he was already willing to sign it even if it was unfavorable to him. "Take my recipe," Tony blurted out. Of course, Michael wasn't going to do him wrong. "No, I'm going to let you decide everything about the restaurant. You can decide what to cook, what to sell, and what to do. I'm just going to stay by the sidelines. This restaurant is still your heirloom," Michael promised him. "Hear that, Remy? He says that you can awaken your talent once you turn 10. The little boy gleamed just as happy as his father. "I want to be a chef just like you, Papa." The two hugged each other before Tony turned to Michael. There was an excitement in his eyes, a fire for cooking that had been relit in his soul. Finally, the results of all the years toiling in an unsuccessful restaurant had finally borne fruit. "What should I do? I can cook about 10 whole chickens a day if I need to." Michael flashed a smile. "I want you to do 100. Tony's face froze. "A 100? Yup," Michael nodded. "And we'll create a whole new restaurant outside of Angora City in the middle of nowhere, but right beside one of the Reborn truck stops." His words felt like 1,000 tons of metal being put on Tony's shoulder consecutively. Cooking 100 chickens was already nigh impossible from the get-go. But now, Michael wanted him to sell chicken outside of civilization as well. This made him start to doubt whether Michael wanted the restaurant to succeed or to go bankrupt. In Tony's mind, if he had few customers now, he'd have even fewer customers once they moved outside a capital city. "How are we going to get customers there?" One of the engineers listening to their conversation chimed in. "There are an estimated 6,000 people traveling along this particular road, and about 19,000 people traveling in total in the entirety of the Golden Road in the Queens region." "Really?" Tony blurted out. The sadder engineer may be munching on chicken as he spoke, but his words were nothing but the truth. ChatJK4 verified it as well. "Yep. And it's estimated to grow more than that once our expansion to the east is complete," Michael added. Tony was overwhelmed by this number, but he was still skeptical about the whole plan. "But what about the chicken? I don't have enough livestock to cook that many meals in a day." "Don't worry about the chickens," Michael said. "I have another subsidiary under Reborn that specializes in farming and livestock. Have you ever heard of Barkus Incorporated?" Now, that name did sound familiar to Tony. The Barkus Incorporated? "I know most high-end restaurants in Angora City get their crops from them." When they became a subsidiary of Reborn, Michael was able to see all the assets and territories under Barkus. In the luscious green forests of the grafted cluster, about 40% of all the farms and livestock present in the area were all owned by one company, Barkus Inc. Chickens were just one of the animals there that they had plenty of. It's not enough to last a lifetime, of course, but it's enough for the restaurant to get started. ChatJK4, remind me to have the Rebornian farmers come take a look at our farms in the grafted cluster to see if they can improve yield. Understood. Making a note of it. The only problem that I think we'll have is the dragon's whiskers. Where do you source these herbs from? Michael asked. I get it from the wet markets early in the morning. There's not a lot of merchants who sell it. There are even some days where no one sells it at all. Michael pursed his lips. Where do you think these merchants get it from? Although dragon's whiskers grow everywhere in the Queens region, it has been widely accepted that there is no feasible way to farm them. You have to find them out in the wild, which is why it is so expensive. This indeed posed a problem for the restaurant that Michael planned, at least for the long term. But short-term, this problem was easy to solve. Just throw a bunch of money until it has all worked out. I'll have my people buy out every available dragon's whiskers in the market. If that's not enough, I'll just issue out a mission in the adventuring guilds. I'm sure they'll jump at the chance given enough bounties for it. Michael began to calculate everything with ChatJK ending up with the estimate of about 1 million gold coins should do it, Michael said out loud. His casualness and willingness to spend about 1 million gold to solve this problem truly opened the eyes of a normal human like Tony. He couldn't even fathom such a number, yet Michael was nodding his head as if it was an acceptable number. Of course, if money could solve everything, then Michael would have no problems. He wished he could just burn money and solve his current dilemmas. Either way, you don't have to worry about anything. You just need to cook and serve it to our customers. Tony couldn't even speak and just nodded his head as he gave up on questioning Michael. The boy was too rich. I'll let you deal with it, Tony said, sitting down in the chair, only for it to collapse into splinters. Michael brought Tony and Remy back to the Reborn headquarters. Of course, he let Remy take everything he wanted in the department store while he and Tony consulted with Yuna about the contract. Another subsidiary company again? Who did you hoodwink this time? Yuna teased Michael. She then turned to Tony. Be careful with this guy. He says he'll give you something, but he ends up forgetting about it. Ahem. My ice cream. Ahem. I'm working on it. Sure you are. Yuna harumphed and turned her head away from Michael. Anyway, this is the contract for becoming a subsidiary of the Reborn company. Please sign here and here. Tony did as Yuna told him and inked his name onto the contract paper. And it was time for Michael's turn. The paper mysteriously slapped his head gently. He signed the contract, and finally, a new subsidiary was added to Reborn. Let's name your new company. What do you think of McTony's? Chapter 314, McTony's. Although Michael did get an elbow nudge from Yuna, the company name McTony's was accepted by Tony and Remy themselves. It sounded satisfying to the ear from their perspective and credited Michael for thinking of such a catchy name. But of course, he may have copied it from a very famous fast food chain from his previous life. Of course, the reason why he thought of this name in the first place was because he was planning McTony's to be the first fast food chain in the world. His plan was to create a McTony's in every single truck stop all along the Golden Road, allowing people to get the signature McTony's chicken anytime they wanted. For that to happen, though, he needed to solidify the process of procuring the ingredients for the McTony's chicken in order for it to qualify as real fast food. Over the next several days, Michael and Tony toured around the grafted cluster to look at all the farms and livestock owned by Barkus Inc. Barkus himself helped Tony get acquainted with all his suppliers, mainly the chicken coops and the herb farms he was going to be coordinating with in the future. This is our chicken farm, housing about 1,000 chickens spread around different coops in the area. He pointed to the large barns in the open field, which was noisy form all the buckaws and cuckoos of the chickens inside. They walked inside and saw healthy chickens strolling across a green field of grass, pecking on the ground in search of any passing worms that might show up from below. This is where the chickens walk around during the day. When night falls, they go back to their individual coops and sleep there. And in the morning, they lay their eggs and go back to foraging for worms. On the other side of the fence, keeping the chickens in one place, was a large row of coops meant for the chickens to sleep in. Michael could even see a few eggs left behind inside, ready to be harvested. How about the chicks? Where are they being raised? Michael asked. Roosters and hens are mingling in one coop, in a batch of around 1,000 fertilized eggs. Then about 400 to 500 of those will grow up to become chickens if we're lucky. Michael calculated all of the factors in the chicken farm and realized that in a day, they could realistically harvest about 50 fully grown chickens for the restaurant sustainably. For now, this was good enough. After all, Michael was only planning on creating one McTony's store in the truck stop. Now, this could quickly change once more truck stops were created and more McTony's were needed, but that was a problem that could be easily solved. I'll have Anne, our agriculture department chief, to survey your lands and have her give some advice on how to improve yield, Michael said, remembering his own note. There were plenty of things that could be streamlined using modern methods, such as dedicated egg sorting machines, nutritious feed for healthy egg production, and the proper way to hatch an egg with an incubator boasting an almost 90% accuracy in growth. Thanks, Barkis genuinely thanked Michael. No problem. That's the benefit of becoming a subsidiary of Reborn. By the way, how's your brother? Bullrun's doing good, Barkis answered with a smile. He's kind of loving his time in prison. He's made new friends during board game nights. After Bullrun realized his mistakes, he voluntarily admitted himself to the Reborn prison and left Bullrun Incorporated to be managed by Michael. Because of that, Michael was able to take advantage of their assets and gather new resources from all their mines. Barkis, meet Tony. He's the one that will be needing all the chickens for our new restaurant. Both awkwardly shook their hands and introduced themselves to each other. I'll leave you guys to reach an agreement on how and when you're going to deliver the chicken and herbs. They had a lot to talk about, with Barkis mostly taking Tony under his wing and teaching him how to manage a company properly from logistics to administrative duties. Although Tony was clueless on a lot of these topics, he did his best to try and learn. Of course, Michael decided to hire some professional help for him later, so that he could just focus on cooking chicken in the restaurant instead of writing paperwork. While they were talking it out, Michael visited their newly functioning mines just a few kilometers away from the farm. As soon as he ascended from the shadows, he saw Priya and the rest of the miners hard at work. Ores and minerals were constantly getting mined and processed in their new machineries. He looked to the side and saw a Rebornian truck with a large open crate on its load filled to the brim with all the processed materials from the mine. After final checking, the truck began its descent down from the mountain and into the Golden Road, where it would be delivered to its intended destination. Boss, our first shipment of ores has just left our mines. Just as you said, we distributed the first load to Angora City for the Golden Road expansion. In the 8,000 tons of material being mined every day, 4,000 of those were being used to renovate the entirety of Angora City to bring it up to Rebornian standards. 2,500 of them would be allocated to the Golden Road expansion eastward, and whatever's left would be used to create the truck stops along the Golden Road. In short, they were using up all their capacity for their current projects, which meant they had no capacity for new ones. The automobile shortage problem would have to be solved another time. But thankfully, this at least meant that the expansion eastward was finally on its way. It would still take a few weeks before the Golden Road reached the Bastard Bandits' forest territory, so Michael had some time to finish up on the first McTony's location. Michael transported himself to the very first truck stop location in the Golden Road. He was accompanied by Kong, the engineering department chief of Reborn. This is where the restaurant is going to be located, boss. The yellow Hobmanki chief used his innate skill to create a visual projection of the finished McTony's restaurant in the open lot. The modern style of architecture was very reminiscent of those fast food chains that Michael was so familiar with back in his previous life. There was even a large sign of McTony's chicken symbol high up on a pole for everyone to see. And of course, it would be remiss if Michael didn't add the drive-through section of the restaurant. Although this wasn't technically a fast food place yet, since they still hadn't figured out how to cook the chicken really fast, Michael already integrated it into the design for the future. The design is good. Thanks, Kong. The chief engineer bowed to Michael. No problem, boss. The ores and materials are going to be delivered here soon, so have our construction workers start to dig out the foundation of the restaurant. Chapter 3:15. Time to cook. A few days passed, and the McTony's restaurant construction was well on its way. While the Rebornian construction workers were busy pouring concrete over the foundation and laying down rebar for support, Michael met with Tony to finish up their preparations for creating the McTony's chicken. How long do you take to cook your chicken from scratch? Michael asked. I don't really know, Tony answered. Michael almost forgot that a majority of the population was still living in a timeless world. They didn't have the well-engineered clocks that the Rebornians had to check the time. To figure out the truth, Tony decided to show Michael how to make the chicken in his own kitchen, while Michael timed everything with his own pocket watch. First, I prepare the chicken, cleaning it with water and plucking out the feathers, Tony said as he took out a whole chicken from the box. With the help of Remy, Tony was able to finish the preparation of the chicken in about 3 minutes. Then, I mix all the spices together, dragon's whiskers included, and turn them into a paste that I lather all over the chicken's skin. I let that marinate while I prepare the oil and the wok for cooking. Michael watched as Tony ripped the dragon's whiskers from their roots and began dicing them with his knife. A minty odor released from the herb as it got cut into pieces, with a little bit of juice being squeezed out of the plant itself. And with the combination of other spices, the signature flavor of the McTony's was created. Once the seasoning was lathered onto the chicken itself, Tony let it rest while he prepared the cooking station. He took out firewood from under his desk and began regulating the fire under the wok-like cooking pan. He then poured vegetable oil into the pan, and waited about 5 minutes for the whole thing to be warm enough to start cooking. This part of the cooking process was fast considering how basic it was. The problem now laid in the cooking itself. After the oil was at its ideal temperature, Tony plunged the chicken into the oil, with some drops spewing all over the kitchen table. It then took him about 20 minutes in total to cook the whole thing before he took it out of the pan and onto a clay plate. All in all, the whole process took just under half an hour, which was the opposite of fast food. Granted, there were only 2 of them working in the kitchen, and one of them was a child, but the time it took for the chicken to cook would still be too long even if they had 5 chefs cooking at the same time. Michael wanted it to be like the fast food chains in his previous world, where people would only have to wait about 2 minutes at most before they received their order. ChatJK4, can you create a cooking system that will streamline the whole process? Understood, Michael. And after a few seconds, a new vision appeared in his mind. This time, the kitchen itself was very reminiscent of the kitchens in his previous world, with large ovens, multiple cooking stations that were temperature-controlled, and even a dishwasher that could clean in a matter of a few seconds. Then, ChatJK4 showed him a video of multiple silhouettes of people working in tandem. One was in charge of plucking and preparing the chicken, one was in charge of creating the seasoning and the flavoring, and there were 5 more chefs cooking the chickens. In this arrangement, it will take about 15 minutes for a chicken to arrive at the customer after ordering. However, this arrangement is only simulated at low capacity. This means that if there were more people ordering than normal, then the waiting times could become even longer than that, which was not ideal. Why can't you cook the chicken a day earlier and just reheat it then? That was the solution fast food restaurants thought of back in his previous world. They freeze their cooked chicken and meats, and only reheat it or recook it once the customer ordered it. The effects of the dragon's whiskers will subside by then. It needs to be freshly cooked for it to retain that certain kick in the taste. After a day, it's gone, Tony answered. It seems that the methods of the fast food chains cannot be replicated in this instance. After all, that magical spice that the dragon's whiskers added to the chicken was what made it good in the first place. It's what he thought will be the reason McTony's will succeed in the future. Can't be disregarded. I guess the drive-through option of the restaurant can't open yet because of this. Despite that, Michael thought that this new cooking system will be good enough for now. 15 minutes per order will be a tolerable amount of time to wait for people. And since the dragon's whiskers taste can still be retained for the whole day without it going disappearing, Michael planned to have Tony and the other chefs prepare a lot of chicken early in the morning to stock up for the whole day. That way, people can still receive their order relatively fast. And besides, it will take some time before McTony's become popular enough for it to be filled at capacity. For now, Michael estimated that there would be around 50 customers per day that would visit the restaurant after its construction in the truck stop, which would grow more and more as the time passed. You know Shiina, right? She'll speak to you and assign some talented chefs to help you work in your new restaurant. Tony fiddled his fingers anxiously. This new restaurant, it's on the Golden Road, right? Yep. It's about 3 days' worth of travel west of Angora City. The chef nodded with a resolute look on his face. Understood. I'll live in the desert if I have to, but can you please let my son live in your headquarters? I don't want him homeless. Michael tilted his head. What are you talking about? You'll have your own house in the truck stop itself. And not only that, but if you want to visit Angora City, then you can just drive your own car there. But I don't. Before Tony could even speak any further, Michael tossed him a small key with the symbol of McTony's engraved in front of it. "That's your car. I can't have one of my subsidiary owners traveling on foot, right? Just make sure to go to the Reborn driving school before you take it out for a spin." Tony let the key fall into his palm, still disbelieving that it was real. Remy tiptoed up to his father's hands to try and look at the new key car that they had just been given. Beep beep. They both looked outside their rundown restaurant house and saw a new automobile parked beside the streets. Its shiny polish was even more shinier than any glasses they owned. "A car!" Remy shouted and immediately ran towards the automobile. No way! The boy had seen many of these riding in the streets and always dreamed of riding in one. He never would have thought they would own one. Tony followed behind his son with the key in his hands. He looked back at Michael, who gave him a reassuring nod. "Go ahead. It's yours." Tony looked back with an awkward expression. I don't know what to say. Haha. Save it for when I awaken your talent." Chapter 316. McTony's Opening. Awaken my talent? Michael raised his hand and used his supreme skill. Gift bestowal. Tony felt a farm sensation in his chest as it glowed a bright light, intensifying until it blinded him for a few seconds. After it subsided, a new world opened up to him. Talent. B-class fried chicken chef. In Tony's chest, he felt mana condensing into a core, allowing him to feel and use mana for the first time in his life. Now, he would be able to use spells and skills to cook chicken easier and much faster than normal. Michael even gave him the skill C to taste, allowing him to know the taste of the McTony's chicken through sight alone, giving him time to make any adjustments before it was served to the customer. Once Tony realized what Michael gave to him, what Michael awakened, a slew of emotions rushed to his face. He hugged his son and then thanked Michael. "I will make McTony's succeed to repay all that you have given me," Tony promised. After just a few days had passed, the McTony's restaurant had finally finished construction. Tony, Remy, and a few other talented Rebornian chefs did their final checking before they officially opened the restaurant. This is amazing," Tony remarked, sliding his hand over the cool door of the refrigerator. "How does this even work?" The kitchen was fully equipped with fuel-powered machines like the stoves, the ovens, and of course the refrigerator. Your assistant chefs will help you familiarize yourself with these machines. A satyr, a dogfolk, a lizard man, and a hobmanki introduced themselves to Tony. They used to be chefs back in the nation of Reborn and were just given a promotion to help Tony with the restaurant. They were all capable people that Michael personally awakened, so he knew they could run things smoothly. He also wasn't worried about Tony getting overwhelmed with the stoves and grills. After all, his talent awakening should have come with modern cuisine knowledge through ChatGK4. "Okay," Tony said, taking a deep breath. "Let's start cooking." Like a well-oiled machine, the six of them started their own duties in the kitchen station, with little Remy helping wherever he could. Just half an hour later, the very first batches of the signature McTony's chicken were finally cooked. They piled them up in a glass container, allowing the customers to see the juicy and crunchy chicken for themselves, tempting them to order. Just a few minutes later, the first few customers finally entered the restaurant. "Hey boss. Hey Chef Tony. Can't wait to eat this again. I've been craving it." It was the Rebornian engineers who had led Michael to Tony's restaurant a few days back. Since the restaurant had just opened, the first few customers were only Rebornians who had heard about its opening through their own circle of friends. A few minutes later, the next group of customers came in and ordered the McTony's chicken as well. And about a few hours after opening, the first non-Rebornian customer had finally arrived. "What's this place? Ooh, that smells delicious. What is it?" About 20 middle-aged men and women entered the restaurant, almost filling the seat capacity. They were a group of people who used the Reborn buses to travel through the territories in the Golden Road as a vacation. And coincidentally, their bus had to refuel in this truck stop. While they waited, they saw this newly constructed restaurant, so they decided to take a chance and enter inside. And as soon as they saw the crispy chickens displayed on the counter, they immediately wanted to order one for themselves. "Let me try one, chef," Actually, make it 2. No, 3. After waiting a few minutes, they were served their own McTony's signature chicken. It only took one bite, that crunch, for the people to voice out their liking for this new and exotic meal. Give me one more. Tony's eyes gleamed in joy. This was the first time he had a lot of customers buying his chicken. The combination of wanting to succeed for Michael and the feeling of wanting to serve good food made Tony a lot more enthusiastic as he tossed the chicken on the cooking pan. "Orders coming right up," he shouted back. Michael watched a successful opening day for McTony's chicken. Although not a lot of people visited it today, it would only be a matter of time until people took notice of it. Those that did buy it promised that they would come back for more if given the chance. For now, Michael instructed Tony and the chefs to keep on cooking chicken every day. Of course, since all their appliances were connected to a generator powered by fuel, they needed to pour gas to it every day for it to keep functioning. It was especially important that they don't forget because there were a lot of frozen chickens in the refrigerator. Thankfully, they were located right next to a gas station, so they wouldn't run out of fuel anytime soon. Now, this was just a temporary solution for now since using gas to power these machines was quite wasteful. Michael would have just to bring electricity further into the Queens region so that they would be plugged into the grid. Speaking of which, the renovation for Angora City was well on its way as well. The construction of the Golden Road to the east and the renovation of the city was being worked on at the same time, which was quite efficient but was a very expensive endeavor. They had to hire a lot of external help from the general public for the construction worker. All of them had to be paid above the standard fee, which thankfully wasn't a problem for a company like Reborn. Money was one thing they didn't lack. Because of Michael's tempting fee, a lot of people signed up for construction work. Even people who normally don't do this kind of work volunteered to go because of the good pay. "I just have to carry these concrete blocks and place them in order? This is easy," one adventurer said. The gold coins he would earn from this was the same as a dangerous mission hunting monsters in the wild, with none of the risk. The first project for Angora was the construction of the sewers and the plumbing systems for each house. And since Angora City was managed by one person, the Duke, getting permission for this construction only relied on him. "Yes, please," answered the Duke when Michael visited him in the baseball stadiums back in the nation of Reborn. "I can't live without a shower or a toilet in my castle." And without looking away from the baseball field, Duke Stelmane signed the contract Michael handed to him in a heartbeat. "You know, sigh, never mind." Michael almost wanted to reprimand the Duke for being too casual about things like this, but remembered that his laid-back attitude made the work a lot easier. Just like that, construction was started. He wanted the project to be done as fast as possible so that the Duke would finally return home from his super-long vacation and Michael could finally relax for a change. "I guess it's finally time to see if I can summon that metallic woman again." Chapter 317, Trying to Summon the Apparition. After that fateful day when he inadvertently summoned the apparition of the metallic woman, Michael had not yet tried to use the finger gun again. First of all, he became quite busy dealing with a lot of business in Reborn, with the lack of resources and the current McTony's project. It was only after things settled down and he completed those tasks did he have enough time to sit down and try it again. Second of all, Michael wanted to make sure that he would do it away from anybody's prying eyes. If he did summon the metallic woman again, then he didn't want the new Iron Maiden religion to become even more crazed than they were right now. Whether he liked to or not, that group was spreading faster and faster throughout the southern tip of the Queens region. This was perhaps one of the only downsides of having the Golden Road so interconnected with a lot of territories. Things like these were spreading faster than normal. Either way, after letting Shiina and the rest of the Rebornians deal with the problems of Reborn for a day, Michael found himself a secluded forestry in the Grafted Cluster. There was no one around him within 100 kilometers. He made sure of that by scanning his surroundings and seeing no sign of light mana anywhere. And as an added precaution, he had ChatJK4 alert him if anyone did unknowingly step foot close to his testing area. This secrecy wasn't just for security reasons, but also with the safety of other people. He didn't know if summoning that metallic woman would result in an unpredictable explosion of power. He didn't even have a guarantee that he could survive it himself if that happened, much less saving an unfortunate bloke that stumbled into this forest. After all, it was clear that the power born from that metallic woman was not made out of mana. It was something completely different, which meant that it was something that not even his supreme talent could control. There was simply too much unknown about the small piece of Godforge in his heart for him to be careless about this stuff. ChatJK4, are you ready? I am always ready, Michael. His confident and a little bit condescending personal AI assistant did give him a bit of a comfort boost. At least he knew that ChatJK4 would protect him if anything bad happened to him. Here goes nothing, Michael muttered to himself. He raised his hand, folding his fingers into a ball except for his pointy finger and thumb, mimicking a modern pistol from his previous life. All 8 cores in his abdomen began to pump out mana throughout his veins, following the magic theory that Michael constructed them to do. As the power gathered at his hands, a blinding glow of light appeared on the tip of his pointy finger. The power contained in this one small part of his body was like a ticking time bomb that was about to explode. He just needed to trigger it and it would shoot out into a laser with unmatched power. But he waited. He didn't pull the trigger yet. Just then, he felt the change in his body. The small piece of Godforge material surrounding his heart valve began to emanate a strange and mysterious power. The sensation he felt now was extremely similar to the sensation he felt back then. Now that he was out of the heat of the moment from the battle, he could finally observe this new sensation through a cool lens. The power was definitely coming from the Godforge piece, with its metallic luster pulsating at the same time as the strange power in his body was convulsing. However, the strange thing was that Michael saw no connection between the two. There was no flow of energy that traveled from the piece to his body. It was akin to a light bulb being powered while it wasn't plugged in. It was wireless power. I don't understand how it's doing this, but if the Godforge piece can transmit power without a wire, then it's more than possible that the Godforge piece didn't have any power at all. It could be getting that mysterious power from somewhere else, essentially just acting as a transmitter. It would make sense why neither he nor ChatJK4 noticed anything weird when he obtained this Godforge piece. ChatJK4, can you analyze anything? I have recorded a lot of parameters from this experiment. But without the theoretical framework for why these effects are happening, then I won't be able to figure out the true nature of this strange power. More samples of the Godforge pieces are needed. Everything that occurred after he began summoning his Unity gun happened the same way as before. There was just one stark difference. Michael looked up above him, expecting to see the bust-up image of the metallic woman looking down at him while spreading her arms. But instead of seeing a human-like figure, Michael instead saw a purely metallic contraption that looked completely alien to the inhabitants of this world, but very familiar to him. It was a gun. Specifically, it was a single-action Desert Eagle pistol, or more commonly known as the Deagle. This was one of the guns that he liked to use on one of his favorite video games in his previous life. It was the very basis for the Unity gun that he created. Whoa! Michael uttered in amazement. The large projection of the Deagle was very familiar, yet the power it held was completely alien to him. But the thing that probably amazed Michael the most was the metallic hand that gripped the very gun in the projection. It looked like a cybernetically enhanced fist that was completely clad in some sort of metallic luster, the same as the Iron Maiden that appeared back then. Its knuckles were red-hot in color, with what seemed to be empty attachments on the back of its hand. He didn't think this fist belonged to the Iron Maiden at all. It looked too bulky to be her hand. He couldn't really be sure of that though, because the solid projection of the hand started to fade off into nothingness by the time it reached the mechanically jointed wrist. The gun seems to be born from the inspiration that I drew the Unity gun from. But what about the hand? Unfortunately, ChatJK4 was as clueless as he was. He would have to get more Godforge pieces if he wanted to find out more. But for now, he had to find out what this new projection could do. With his finger gun glowing with a bright white light, a single trigger was all it would take to release all that power into one concentrated beam. Even when he only used the bare minimum amount of mana for this spell, Michael didn't want to carelessly trigger it in some random direction. The strange power from the Godforge piece was amping its intensity by an unknown amount, so he had to take that into account. With no target in sight, Michael aimed directly above his head. At least this way, he knew nothing would get hit accidentally. Chapter 318. Godforge Progress. As he triggered the Unity gun in his hand, Michael felt the large deagle above his head move to point to wherever he was pointing. Even though this metallic apparition was made out of a completely alien and mysterious energy, Michael felt somehow connected with it, as if he could command it as if it were his own hand. The blinding light in his finger finally came to a crescendo, releasing a giant beam of pure Unity mana, destroying even that of the air mana present in the atmosphere. Its speed was as fast as light itself, reaching the heavens up above almost instantaneously. It was not something mere mortals like Michael could follow. The whole sky seemed to darken as the Unity gun continued to release energy into the atmosphere in the form of light. Then, a few seconds later, the beam subsided, leaving only white smoke leaking off of his finger. Chapter 319. Blazel's Fury. The fiery woman of Flarecorp sauntered over to the bastard bandits' hideout with the bravado of someone completely confident of her stature. Her chin was perpetually turned up, as if looking down at all the bastard bandits that dared to look at her. Her orange, flaming armor accentuated the curves in her body, and despite the armor's purpose being for protection only, the woman's attire had some parts missing on a lot of strategic places that truly made her whole outfit become a lot more fashionized. Miss Blazel, I didn't know you were going to be visiting our base so soon. No warning? Wayno asked, clearly angry at the intrusion but hiding his contempt. Why can't I? Blazel said, shrugging her shoulders. This too shall be part of Flarecorp's empire in the future. I'm just here to ensure that this place is up to my cousin's standard. He is quite the stickler for these kinds of things, you know. Chapter 320. Diva. The elite Shadow Orc's pride as an— Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.